fine.
And I know you enjoy drinking beer, don't you?
Don't anymore.
You did quit drinking beer?
Yes.
Now, you used to have a really, an incredible appetite for drinking, didn't you?
Right, for beer, yes.
Is it true that you, in one sitting, drank 117 beers?
Yes. One night.
And did that? Were you drunk at the end of that?
I don't remember. I think I passed out.
Great beer taste. That's what got me.
It's a great light beer. Got it?
It's because of its great taste.
Great light beer. He still doesn't get it.
Great taste.
One Love at Light, Buck. Whatever got you guys. With Love at Light, you got it right.
Great taste in a great light beer. Have you noticed how many true beer drinkers are choosing Labatt Light?
It's not just a light. It's a Love at Light.
Continues. Well, the bartender had taken those little ice buckets, those little white ice buckets you have in the room. He took 8 of them and put them behind the bar, and every time somebody would have a beer, he'd take the bottle cap off and throw it in that little plastic container. Well, here now it's 7:30 at night.
You've been drinking how long then?
Well, from about 9 in the morning. Yeah, yeah, and
10 hours.
Yeah, I mean we're basket cases. So he counted them up because the contest went from an hour to infinitely. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So Andre had 116 bottle caps in his bucket.
116.
Yeah,
beer.
Frank Valois, Andre's manager, had like 65.
In addition to being one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, there is no doubt in this beer nerd's mind that Andre the Giant was also one of the greatest beer drinkers. Usually when we talk about the greatest drinkers of all time, I'm combing through a lot of unsubstantiated stories and pseudo-urban legends, but Andre the Giant is different. The sheer number of people vouching for his ability to drink 2 cases of wine or a keg of beer or 4 bottles of Jack Daniels is a true testament to just how much beer he could put away. So I can't think of a better case study to look at how the human body processes alcohol, because as a beer nerd with way too much time on his hands, I can't help but want to know the science behind how one human body could possibly manage to ingest over 100 beers before being rendered unconscious. So grab just 1 beer and leave a like down below, and let's get started. Ingesting beer is like pro wrestling in a lot of ways. They're both an easily accessible bit of escapism that, in moderation, softens the rough edges of an often cruel and grinding world. Wrestling accomplishes this by blending high drama with the veneer of a sports league, and beer does its numbing by bringing some alcohol to the party, specifically ethanol. See, the moment you even take a sip of beer, your body almost immediately begins to react to this slight bit of poison coming its way. I was surprised to learn in doing my research for this video that a small amount of alcohol absorbed into your blood immediately upon entering your mouth. There are blood vessels in your mouth that absorb all sorts of things. This system is really useful for grabbing things like simple sugars and vitamins from fruits and vegetables, but alcohol cheats and abuses this quick entry to your bloodstream as well. Although only about 5% of the alcohol you ingest is absorbed this way, just know that the moment that sweet, delicious beer hits your tongue, you're already going to get to work getting it processed. Once swallowed, beer flows its way down to the stomach where things pick up a bit. About 20% of the alcohol in beer is absorbed in your stomach, meaning that so far in this battle, only about 1/4 of the alcohol has landed its punch. But it's the stomach where the story can take a turn for the better or the worse. See, on an empty stomach, beer is ushered through the stomach quickly into the small intestine, where the remaining 3/4 of the alcohol gets absorbed. Beer doesn't need to be mashed up or broken down like more solid foodstuffs, so it just slides on through. But if your stomach is full of other foods, your body holds the beer in the stomach for a longer period of time while that solid food is being broken down. Because absorption is so much faster in the small intestine, the longer you keep beer out of there, the longer it's going to take for you to get drunk. That's why if you drink beer or other alcoholic beverages on an empty stomach, it hits you really, really fast. sometimes a little too fast. Anyway, once the alcohol is absorbed into your blood, it moves around in the body very quickly, causing all sorts of effects. The most obvious effects are those on the brain and nervous system. Look, if you're here watching my videos, you're probably a beer nerd and know these effects well. Minor mood elevation, reducing social inhibitions, a buzzed feeling, coordination problems, maybe slurring one's words, losing the ability to think clearly, maybe some sensations of movement, and many more dramatic problems if continued consumption in excess. For those of us who have lots of experience with beer, it's not a mystery as to what happens. No, what I really want to know is why it happens. What does alcohol do in the brain to cause all these things to happen? Alcohol affects brain chemistry by messing with neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that transmit signals between neurons in your brain. Neurotransmitters are either excitatory, meaning they boost electrical activity in the brain, or inhibitory, meaning that they slow things down. Alcohol enhances the potency of the inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA, which can cause sluggish movements and slurred speech when it reaches above a certain threshold. In addition, alcohol reduces the production of glutamate, a stimulating neurotransmitter, without which the whole brain slows down in every task it tries to do. In addition, alcohol stimulates the production of dopamine, which triggers the reward center of the brain and gives a very pleasurable sensation. All these changes produce a variety of effects depending on which part of the brain we're looking at. The cerebral cortex is responsible for higher level thinking and coordination, and the general slowing of the brain depresses that inhibitory center, making people a little more open than they otherwise would be. In greater amounts, alcohol dulls the incoming information from the eyes, ears, and mouth, and makes it a little harder to think clearly. The cerebellum controls balance, so if you're a fall-down drunk, you know what part of the brain you've hit really hard. The hypothalamus controls hormone release, and alcohol tends to stimulate the extra release of sexy hormones. Unfortunately, alcohol inhibits the part of the brain that manages sexual performance, so although you might be in the mood if you drink enough, you're not going to be able to act on those feelings. And perhaps most critically, the medulla handles the automatic brain functions like breathing, consciousness, and temperature. If you depress this area by drinking way too much booze, you're going to have a bad time. Drink responsibly, folks. Do not mess with your medulla. But in round 2, your body decides to stage a comeback against alcohol's inhibiting effects on your brain. Many different systems get to work trying to forcibly remove alcohol from the brain. Up to 8% of alcohol you ingest is breathed out via the lungs. When your alcohol-laden blood reaches the blood vessels in your lungs, it evaporates and is exhaled as you breathe. This is why the fastest and easiest way for police to test how much you've been drinking is with a breathalyzer. That nifty device can gauge with very good accuracy how much booze you've consumed by reading how much alcohol is being evaporated into your breath and then extrapolating from there. Other blood vessels exposed to the air can also evaporate off some of that alcohol from your beer. The very fine blood vessels near the surface of your skin exude a little bit of alcohol too, and if you're particularly pickled, the temperature regulation effects can combine with the alcohol evaporation to produce a phenomenon known as the beer sweats. Your kidneys filter the blood, so any changes in the composition of your blood will have an effect on those bean-shaped organs. Alcohol makes your kidneys work harder and produce even more urine, as up to 10% of the alcohol consumed leaves your body via urine. That's why the lines at the porta potties are so long at beer festivals. Not only are you consuming a large amount of liquid, but that liquid forces your body to create even more urine. But the biggest heavyweight alcohol wrestler in your body is by far the liver. The liver is really good at breaking down alcohol, doing some 80 to 90% of the heavy lifting in getting that fun poison out of you. With the help of many different enzymes, the liver grabs those ethanol molecules, puts them in a figure 4 leg lock, and breaks them down into carbon dioxide and water. But as you can imagine, pinning molecule after molecule is very physically taxing for your liver, so it can only break down so much alcohol at once. In an hour, your liver can eliminate about 10 grams of alcohol, which is about the same amount as you'll find in a 12-ounce 4 to 5% ABV beer. If you drink more than this, your liver is going to be working harder and longer, and you'll be feeling the sedating effects more intensely. Wow, I never really realized how many bodily functions get activated simply by just drinking beer. Absorption rates, blood pressure, evaporation, and stomach capacity, all these scientific concepts play a role in this process. And to make things even more complicated, all these processes that happen the moment you take your first sip can vary based on a variety of factors: height, weight, age, gender, and even things like altitude and long-term alcohol tolerance. And it's these factors that make Andre the Giant one of the most prolific beer drinkers to ever walk the face of the earth. Let's start with age, as I find drinking beer really highlights the complicated and multifaceted process of aging. See, when you're young, you're not just faster and stronger in terms of running and lifting heavy things, your cell processes are speedier too. This means that when you drink a beer as a young person, the alcohol hits your brain faster, but your liver also gets to work processing that alcohol quicker. This is why rowdy college students can get pretty drunk partying, but also bounce back in time to get to class. But when your body slows down as you age, people generally find they don't get drunk as quickly, but the effects of alcohol may last longer and lead to more hangovers because your body just doesn't process that beer as quick as it used to. This is because things like decreases in muscle mass and enzyme production in the liver and increases in blood pressure are all part of the aging process. And although we don't exactly understand why all these things tend to decrease over time, the science of aging is just as complicated as processing alcohol in general. So we'll have to save that for another video. Weight is another factor that is often cited when it comes to how much a beer or two will impact your body. The more weight, whether in muscle or fat, you have, the more blood you need to support it. The more blood you have overall in the body, the more diluted that one drink of alcohol will be. Height tends to be strongly correlated with weight, so the bigger you are, the less impact alcohol will have, and the more you'll need to drink to get drunk. This is pretty intuitive if you've ever seen a pro wrestler-sized individual knock back 4 stouts without batting an eye. Women also tend to feel the effects of alcohol more so than men, even when adjusted for overall body weight. This is because men tend to have more muscle mass than women, even at the same weight. Muscle holds about 10% more blood than fat cells do. So for the same reason that weight means more dilution, the muscle advantage men have also give them the ability to dilute more alcohol in beer. Most drinkers understand these factors, but there are some more obscure things at play when it comes to how drunk you get off that drink. Altitude is a fun one I found while researching this video. Our bodies are really good at adapting to our environments, and if you live at a higher altitude, you produce more blood to help your cardiovascular system more effectively deliver oxygen to your cells in order to compensate for the lower oxygen levels up high. And as we've learned with the other factors we've discussed, the more blood you have, the less impact a single beer will have on you. The last major factor is something researchers refer to as functional tolerance, and this is just a fancy term for a decrease in the body's sensitivity to alcohol's effects over time. That means if I drank 3 beers and someone who drinks 3 beers a day has 3 beers, I'm going to be showing more signs of intoxication than that daily drinker. Although this doesn't impact blood alcohol levels per se, as the liver can still only work so fast, the daily drinker will be able to handle their alcohol better than someone who drinks less often. Researchers have found that functional tolerance can be developed in upwards of 50%, taking twice the amount of alcohol in order to feel the same effects. This level of tolerance is highly dangerous and can quickly lead to an individual consuming dangerous levels of alcohol without even knowing it, and it's a sign that a drinker has probably developed a serious problem with alcohol. Now, I've been rambling on about all this sciencey stuff for far too long, but if you've been paying attention, you can probably see that all these factors combined make Andre the Giant one of the greatest beer drinkers of all time. Let's run down some quick Andre stats to see how they stack up against an average drinker like myself. Truly, Andre was a giant when it came to height and weight, being billed for his bouts at 7 feet 4 inches tall and 520 pounds, or 2.24 meters and 236 kilograms if you're not using freedom units. Intuitively, we know this is ridiculously big. I mean, just look at this picture of him holding an average beer can. But to show you how statistically crazy the mere existence of someone like Andre was, let's look at this distribution graph of the heights of North American men. The average height is around 69 or 70 inches, with the vast majority of men falling between 65 and 75 inches tall. Andre actually breaks this mold so much that I can't even find images with his height of 88 inches on their scales. He's literally off the charts. His height of 88 inches is 6.4 standard deviations away from the mean. Statistically speaking, this is ridiculous. Like a 22% quadruple imperial IPA ridiculous. And because we know the more height and weight means more beer can fit, his drinking prowess was bound to be just as ridiculous. But that's just two base factors. Andre also checks almost every other major factor that lets a human consume a ridiculous amount of poison and live. He's male, he's very muscular, he has a big stomach and appetite, letting him drink on a very full stomach, and his rowdy wrestling friends had him partying all the time, letting him build a huge functional tolerance. All in all, Andre the Giant has every factor cranked up to 11 when it comes to knocking back beers. And that begs one final question for this beer nerd. How difficult is it to replicate one of Andre's 100 plus beer drinking sessions? In order to calculate this, we're going to need to use an online blood alcohol calculator to see how inebriated Andre would get when he was at his drunkest. For reference, this calculates how much of the liquid circulating around your body is alcohol versus how much is blood. To use me as an example, if I drank one light beer with a 4.2% ABV, my blood alcohol content would reach a peak of 0.023, which is almost enough to cause a slight lowering of inhibitions and maybe a little bit of mild euphoria without really any negative consequences. If we enter Andre's weight of 520 pounds and adjust for his extreme alcohol content, he probably wouldn't even move off 0 on the scale. One beer might as well be no beers for Andre. In fact, just to get to that meager 0.023%, Andre would have to chug 3.5 cans of beer to feel the exact same way I feel after one. And that's before his liver even gets to metabolizing everything. And here is where things get extreme. In order to get to the 0.08% blood alcohol content that renders one impaired enough to drive, an average beer nerd like me would have to drink 3.5 cans of light beer in pretty quick succession. For Andre the Giant, this would require a full 12 cans of beer, and he would pretty much have to chug this beer in order to be unable to drive. Because his liver is so good at processing alcohol, if he took just 1 hour to consume that 12-pack of beer, his blood alcohol content would be just over 0.04%, or half the legal limit. And that metabolization is the key to his drinking success. If Andre chugged 24 cans of beer in quick succession, his maximum ABV would only be 0.168%, which is enough to be pretty drunk and get some slurred speech, but in just 2 hours he'd be sober enough to drive after drinking an entire slab of cans. Crazy that he would be able to recover that quickly. But let's take the story we played at the start of this video to the extreme. 116 cans of beer over 10 hours of consumption. his blood alcohol content would be 0.359%, which puts him into the range of passing out, but not even in the risk of the death zone, which is absolutely insane to me because 116 bottles of beer is nearly a keg's worth. In fact, if we wanted Andre to get up to 0.40, which all but guarantees loss of consciousness, you would have to drink 125 bottles of beer. One entire keg's worth of light beer. I know a lot of times when we talk about humanity's greatest drinking stories and the best livers of all time, there's a certain degree of skepticism we need to keep in the back of our minds. There's a lot of tall tales out there. But after looking at how the body processes alcohol and just how much body Andre the Giant was working with, there is no doubt in my mind that when people say Andre could drink over 100 beers in a single day session, their claims are absolutely 110% true. I believe that in the pantheon of beer drinking gods, Andre the Giant should be front and center. All hail Andre the Giant. May his legend live on in the bottom of your glass.